Welcome to the Bright Ideas Podcast, where we share bold insights and real stories for people leaders building companies and cultures that scale. I'm your host, Desiree B, Sharpe, keynote speaker and CEO of Color Vision Lab. We're the people and culture consulting firm helping small businesses design smarter systems and build high-performing teams. Today, I'm joined by a very special guest, Michael Vajda, Managing Director at Elevate Global US. If you want to scale your business without sacrificing your culture, this conversation is for you. And if you're looking for ways to elevate your people strategy, DM us the word growth on LinkedIn for a free consultation. Michael, welcome to the Bright Ideas Podcast. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Desiree. Great to be on with you. Appreciate the opportunity to share some ideas and have a great conversation today.
Yes, me too. I know it's going to be a great one. I'm very excited. Well, Michael, you have had such a dynamic career. You've worked on both the property and agency side of your industry. You've run your own boutique agency for about 10 years, and now you are leading the U.S. operations for Elevate Global. Looking back, what do you feel shaped your leadership style the most? Is there one particular experience or run that you've had at in your business or in your current role that has really defined how you approach leadership?
That's a good question. I think I've always been drawn to the leadership role it's gone all the way back to college, being the president of my fraternity, and then going to be like the homeowners association president of where I was. I guess I'm just one of those people that, certainly wants to make a difference and roll up my sleeves and get involved. And usually that's what leaders are looked to. So it's just always been in my DNA. Certainly being an entrepreneur and owning my own business was a big driver to that leadership journey. When you own your own business, you are the face of it, the back of the house, and the front of the house, and everything else. So, yeah, I think obviously experience and a lot of successes, but more importantly, the failures have taught me a lot as I've now gotten to this point from a leadership standpoint.
I love that you touched on your entrepreneurial journey. My husband actually he has a background in supply chain, and during the pandemic, he left his corporate career to work in his events production and DJing business full time for 4 years. And then he went back to work in the supply chain space 2 years ago. And we always talk about how having time to really cut your teeth on entrepreneurship and develop that grit and resilience and all the skills that you pick up along the way, it really does position you to kind of hit the ground running if you decide to go back in-house. So I would love to learn, what specific lessons did entrepreneurship teach you that you carry in your role today as a managing director?
I think the number one thing is when I was an entrepreneur, you got out of the business what you put in. So you weren't just going through the motions and having an off day but still knowing you were going to get a paycheck every 2 weeks. It was up to me to make things happen in order to get a paycheck and to obviously pay the people that entrusted their careers with me. So yeah, look, I think we'll probably talk about this throughout the discussion, but it's really, rolling up your sleeves, it's getting involved, and it's also having a plan. But I think, what I learned having owned my own business and then coming back is also a little philosophical as well as like, truly understanding what's important and what isn't as important. I say that in the context of like energy and what I do each day and where I need to focus my mental strength for the betterment of like the vision of the business versus getting caught up in a lot of the, things that go on in a corporate environment, politics and things of that nature that just aren't super important. I'm in a very fortunate place where yes, I'm back in the agency world, but I'm also definitely have some autonomy running the U.S. market here, and have the ability to shape and drive the team towards our vision of being a top staffing agency in the experiential space. So for those out there thinking about being an entrepreneur, I would say it's definitely probably taught me the most about myself and certainly has helped me kind of re-enter the agency or corporate world with a lot more focused mindset on I would say what's important, um, versus what isn't.
Mhm. Michael, we're in a really interesting time right now in just the state of the economy. There are a lot of small businesses that are struggling. There are a lot of people getting laid off, losing their jobs due to restructuring, due to AI, so many different things. And I'm finding that there's some owners who are deciding to make that transition back to an in-house full-time role. But after you've been out of the workforce for so long, especially as an entrepreneur, sometimes people can be a little reluctant to hire you. So I'm curious for my own interests. How did you position yourself to be able to land your current role after having been in business full time for 10 years?
Yeah, I wish I could tell you there was this great strategy where I, looked at my brand per se and all of that. To be really honest, I was keeping my eye out because we were a small boutique agency and, we got through COVID, but barely. My business was essentially shut down, no events, no activations, no anything. And we were small enough to be able to absorb it. Honestly, a recruiter reached out to me at the right time when I was kind of thinking. I think they liked what they saw on LinkedIn. I'm a big proponent of LinkedIn. And, Desiree, I'll be honest, I didn't necessarily, the first trepidation was like, I've been on my own, running my own business, not really answering to anyone for 10 years. Why do I want to go back to that? It's the whole reason I started my business because I wanted to control my own destiny more and I wanted to get out of the business what I put in. And I was fortunate enough to land with a company in a situation where I had some autonomy, which was important. And I also felt that I had gotten through the agency kind of climate. I was way past the hoping to climb the corporate ladder and all that type of stuff. I wanted to just land in a spot that aligned with um, my skill set, obviously, culture more importantly, and then really like my beliefs and like how I wanted to run a team, and all that just happened to align, which was again, I'm very fortunate that it's happened. And yes, it is a difficult atmosphere right now in the U.S. economy. Political thoughts aside, businesses just can't run like this. It's too uncertain. Things change too quickly, and you can't strategize or plan when every day, and I'm not over exaggerating that, every day something is changing, and you can't plan when it's like that. So, yeah, I mean, I've we have a couple openings here, and I'm trying to find the right folks for that, and I tell everyone I interview, I've been on that side, and I may be back on that side. You never know, but, like, what we try to do is make sure that, we're honest and upfront and we communicate, because I've read too many stories of these companies and these positions just ghosting people and not even responding. I mean, in this day and age, you brought up AI, you can't tell me you can't set something up on ChatGPT to say, "Hey, you're just not the right fit. Appreciate it." At least that person and that candidate has an answer. But some of the stuff where people are just waiting and waiting and waiting and being ignored, that's not how we're gonna do. That's not how we do it. And I've said that verbatim to people. Look, we may not hire you, but at least you'll know why, and you'll be told in a timely way. That's the least you can do from a human standpoint. Now I get it. We're not IBM or a giant company that gets thousands and thousands of resumes, but like I said before, there's an automated way to at least sound human and give people a response where they can then move forward. So probably a long-winded answer to your question, but you can tell it's a bit of a passion point for me because I just think you gotta treat people the right way. And again, I said in all my interviews just this last week, I said, we are interviewing other people. So you know where you stand and we'll make sure that we consider you. And then if you're not the fit, then we'll let you know why.
So many gems in that response, and I could not agree more. It actually makes me think about a previous guest that I spoke with, Brad McAfee, who he used to be the former CEO of Porter Novelli,
I
and
know Brad very well. Yeah, he's a great, great guy.
and he's phenomenal. That's amazing. Well, wow, that what a full circle moment. But We talked a lot on the podcast and in person over coffee about how his setback when he transitioned out of his role at Porter Novelli, he took on the entrepreneurial challenge and ran his own business for some time. And he talked about how that experience humbled him and it helped him to develop more empathy for people who sat on the other side of those hiring tables. And he was the candidate and he understood what it felt like to, be rejected and be, given the runaround when you're in a pretty desperate situation. And those seasons are never fun, but you learn a lot about yourself. And it sounds like you've had a similar experience and kind of weathering the 2020 storm and having a business during that time.
Yeah, I'll be even, I'll give probably a harder example. Look, I've been laid off, I think counting probably like 3 times. One time, I was laid off and I have 2 kids. They're older now, but at the time, one was a year and a half and the other one wasn't even born. And I got laid off like 5 weeks before she was born, and look, I'm not looking for sympathy or anything like that. A lot of people in a lot of different positions, but yeah, it's humbling, and you find out what you're made of. You find out a lot about yourself. I know Brad very well. He was, the president of Porter Novelli. I mean, it's one of the biggest PR firms there are, and yeah, when you get in those positions, it is easy to think they're forever, and it's easy to think that you'll never be in that position again. And I can tell you, I don't take this job that I have for granted, ever. I just don't. I mean, you know, when my owner says to me, "Hey, I'll see you in February," one of the first things I think about is like, "All right, well, I'm here till February." I know it's kind of a weird way to look at it. I feel very comfortable with where I am, but I also understand that and have been on that other side, and it's a humbling experience, but it also teaches you a lot about yourself. And I think that is another thing that I try to do very religiously and consistently is help other people and connect them to opportunities. I mean, I have a person that I won't name that I'm connected to on LinkedIn, and he was working at a large agency that we were trying to do some staffing work for, and I never really even got the time of day from him, and then I found out that through LinkedIn that he was looking for a job, and I started connecting him with jobs, and he was like a bit blown away that someone that he kind of knew very limited would help him. And I just said the same thing that I said to you. Like, I may be in that position down the road, and maybe the situations are reversed, or it's just good karma, right? It's just good karma to do things when you can for other people with no agenda. I mean, that's the thing that also will turn me off really quickly. Again, not on LinkedIn, but it's just top of mind where people will connect with you and it's not genuine. It's for something and you don't even know them. And I'm like, all right, well, you're out. I kind of just delete them, and I kind of have a standard thing I put up there as well. Like, it's great to connect, and if there's something mutually beneficial for us to talk about, great. And if there's anything I can help you with, great. I'm happy to do it. So, yeah, I guess they say with age comes wisdom, and so maybe that's where I'm at.
Yeah, just do the right thing. And it's very fulfilling to serve others. It's hard to do it when you're in a tough place financially or career wise, but I've found the most fulfillment by giving to others, even during times when I'm going through my own stuff. So I appreciate you sharing that. Michael, you mentioned that you work really closely with millennials and Gen Z as a Gen X leader yourself. I want to know what are some of the biggest differences you've noticed and how these generations approach work?
Yeah, I think for me, it's putting learning and kind of educating myself on how they like to work and what their expectations are over what the general, like, commentary, usually negative, is about those generations, right? I mean, yeah, I'm a Gen Xer. I grew up with no internet, 3 channels on my TV, and I was a latchkey kid, and I went to school, and my mom worked. I was in a single parent household, and came home, and I'd entertain myself, do my homework, and do everything else till she came home. And I have 2 kids. They're both teenagers, and their life is completely different than mine. But yeah, I think it's about pausing the energy that you're going to put into, let's say, the stereotype that's been built around those generations, and trying to be more learned about it, is probably the best way for me to say it. Look, I've been a mentor and I still continue to be. And one of the first things I do with any of my mentees is I show them this video that previous President Barack Obama put out. And it's really just, it's a very short video, but he basically is telling that generation, and I would say the same thing, is learn how to just get things done. And, if there's a opportunity or a challenge within the business, be the person that raises your hand or steps in and says, "Look, I'll work on that and I'll get that fixed or I'll get it done." If you continue to do that, and I couldn't align with him more, leadership will notice that. Will notice because as he also says, when he was president, he has a ton of people that would explain to him in the most eloquent way what the problem is. Some people call it solution-oriented thinking, whatever you want to label it as, but the people that I trust that I can count on one and a half hands here in my team, they're the ones who I go to who get things done. There's examples all over the place. We had a big challenge just this past Friday with an event in Oakland, California, and they faced the challenge. They didn't put their head in the sand, and they came up with a solution, and we got it fixed. And yes, we'll go back and we'll look and say, all right, let's not get ourselves into that problem again. Let's definitely autopsy it a little bit. But that's the thing that I think is missing a little bit. I do see a lot of thinking, and I'm trying to stay positive, but there's things where things do just take time, and there's patience challenges with the younger generations thinking that we need to be at a certain point at a certain point, and that's just not realistic in a lot of senses. I don't think people want to hear the, paying their dues. I think that's the statement that a lot of the older generation says. Um, but there is a bit of validity to that where you've got to learn, you've got to go through a lot of things, you got to make mistakes, and you have to have a leader or manager that understands that you're going to make mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes. I mean, I make mistakes all the time. Just don't make the same mistakes all the time and consistently, because then there's an issue there. So, yeah, it's a challenge. Desiree, it's a challenge. I mean, I'm a way that I work and that I expect, and I'm in the events industry, and for anyone who's in that industry knows there's really no hierarchy, right? Like if I'm on, like, before I get into the staffing side, I ran events and was in activation. And, like you said, I was the owner of a company and, I came on site. If a box needed to be picked up and moved, or if I needed to go do a check-in because someone was late, just go do it. So it just kind of goes back to that mentality of like, just get things done. And if you have the right manager and you're in the right place, people will notice and you'll get to where you want to go quicker.
I agree. And I think that type of mindset and approach to work is more important now than ever when companies are tightening their budgets. They're figuring out ways to reduce costs and really weather this economic storm that a lot of us are going through right now. So if you have someone on staff who's not really pulling their weight, they don't seem like they want to be there, they're not taking initiative, it's very easy to start thinking about, is there someone else who could be a better fit, who's willing to come in, roll up their sleeves? And I appreciate how nicely you put it. But I think sometimes you got to give a little bit of tough love. I'm thinking about some of the earlier days in my career. I worked really long hours, wasn't getting paid a lot, did things I didn't really want to do. But then I realized I couldn't keep jumping from job to job because you really have to be at a job for at least 18 months to 2 years to really know the job, to get some real experience and be able to say you've gained skills from that job. You've got to have been with the company through some highs and some lows to really know what it's like to do that job. And I think it's a missed opportunity, when we have some younger workers who aren't sticking with a job, an employer, a relationship, whatever it is, I think there's just a challenge with commitment in general. And so I do hope that we continue to improve upon that, as we move forward.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, look, I hire people. First thing I look at is the resumes. How long have they been at their previous jobs? If I see that from like, it's 2025. If I see from 2017 to 2025, they've been at 4 or 5 jobs. I'm like, all right, well, that means one or the other, right? They're not, they haven't been performing well, and they're looking for the next opportunity, and which is fine if you're looking for another opportunity. But I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, yes, I try to be as kind as I can be, but I tell my team, I go, look, analogy I use is, look, I can see that the house is on fire. I need to know how to put it out. I need someone to tell me how to put it out. I don't need you to stand next to me and say, wow, the house is really on fire. Like, no kidding, so I think I was in the same boat as her. I mean, look, I did when I first moved to Atlanta, I was working 2 free internships. I was trying to get into sports marketing. I was working an internship with a company that put on pro cycling events, didn't know anything about cycling, and I was working for a minor league basketball team. Both were free, and in order to pay my rent, I was bartending and waiting tables at a restaurant in Marietta, Georgia, right? And I would leave my job, I would change into my, penguin suit to get in to go work. I'd work all night, and then I'd go back. And thankfully, one thing led to another, and the cycling company ended up hiring me full time, and that's how I started with into the industry. In the industry, I had some other experience, but I mean, what else are you going to do? No one's, especially in our industry, like everyone wants to work in sports and work in marketing, and all of that. And first thing I tell people all the time, if they ask, is, do you like your weekends and holidays? And if they look at me in a confused way, I said, well, that's when you're going to be working, right? I mean, if you're working for the Atlanta Braves, you've got 81 home games, mostly at night, that you're going to be working at, right? So you're going to get up at 8 o'clock and go into work. You're not going to get home till probably 11 o'clock after a baseball game. Do you want to do that 81 times a year from May through the summer to the fall and kind of have winters off? Think about that. And like, does that connect to your lifestyle? Nothing against the Braves, nothing against working for a team, but you have to go into it with that mindset and know, like, all right, yes, it's great to go and work. Look, I've gone and done some amazing things, and I've been to some amazing events and things in my career. But, now I'm older, I've got kids. One just went to college, and, if someone said, hey, do you want to go to the US Open? And it had just happens to be a weekend that, I wanna go see my kid, I'm gonna go see my kid. I've been to enough of those things where it's not as important to me as it was in my look, in my 20s and 30s, it was great. I had a blast. I traveled all the time. I was single. It was great, but things change. So, for the better, in my opinion, and just I think, it's important that people go into these opportunities with their eyes wide open, and it's also, I tell people, it's a two-way street. You're interviewing the company as well as them interviewing you, right? So, like, you're gonna make sure that, you're a good fit culturally and everything else, and, I say that as well. I guess I think for me, I've had enough instances and experiences with places that I've worked that I've learned enough to formulate how I would do it, and now I'm in a position to do it the way I wanna do it. So like we said earlier, being human, communicating, being honest, giving feedback, timely feedback, whether it's good or bad, not taking things personally, and trying to do the best we can to do what we've been hired to do.
Michael, you said something really powerful on a previous call that we've had. You said that people do business with people they like and trust, which is something I hear all the time and I live by, which is why I put a lot of effort into client experience and employee experience as well. In a business driven by relationships, what habits or strategies do you use to build trust with both your team and clients?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think on the client side, it's finding commonalities. Yeah, I just have to pull from examples, like recent examples. I just was talking and meeting a new contact at an agency that we do work with, but we don't do a lot of work with. And I finally got around to finding the right person who will make decisions that will affect whether or not we work with them or not. And yeah, I never met the person. Just LinkedIn and hello and hey, let's meet. Um, Usually, the first thing I always do is see where are they living. I've traveled all over the US, Canada, Europe, try to find some commonalities there. If they're from the Northeast, then, that's where I'm from originally. In this case, he's up in the New York, Connecticut area, and found out that, he has some kids who are a little older than mine and just getting out of college, and hey, mine's just starting college. So it kind of breaks down that barrier a little bit before, from a transactional relationship to more of a, well, I'll say a human relationship. There's some commonalities there, and then it makes it a lot easier to talk about essentially, what you're trying to get from them and what they need to know from you. I think that's been a big skill set of mine. I'm an outgoing person. I'm genuinely interested in other people's lives beyond work. So I think that's a really good way to start and kind of bring the like part of it into this. As far as trust is concerned, on the client side, it just all comes down to your performance. I mean, we have many clients who they may not like me. I don't know, but as long as we continue to perform and we do what they're asking us to do, I tell my team, look, that's all we can do, right? And if for some reason they don't want to work with us, or there's some reason that, it's not a rainbow and, sunshine relationship, that's fine. It can be transactional and like, look, we hired you to do this. We did it and we'll continue to do it at that level. And usually if you can do that for a while, it seeps into the like part of it. And you get to know people a little bit more. I'm not real pushy on finding out, and trying to, get into everyone's personal lives. I really try to keep that separate. From a team standpoint, I think it's communication. Like I said before, the role I have, I manage a lot of people. Feedback, one-on-ones are really important. Really try to be consistent with those. One-on-ones meaning, every couple of weeks I sit down with my direct reports and I essentially have a open and honest conversation with them on how things going, how their day to day is, and then what I do all the time is leave time at the end for them to give me feedback, right? Because if I'm the only one talking, then there's no reason to have the one on one, right? They should be the ones talking the most, right? So I try to, ask open ended questions, try to get a feel for any personal stuff that may be affecting their work, positive or negative, if they want to share it. And then really I want the feedback. I want to know, all right, what am I doing well? Am I supporting you the way you need to? What do you see from a business standpoint as the leader of the market? I'm not visible to every little thing that goes on. I don't have eyes on our staffing managers on a day-to-day basis because it's not my world, right? So, yeah, it's building, people say like and trust. Yeah, it's easy to say that, but you've got to build both of those things. Trust comes with, as I've always said, under promising and over delivering. So a lot of people who over promise and under deliver, that erodes trust very quickly. And the likability part, yeah, it's personality. It's finding commonalities with the people you've been hired to help and then doing really good work, and then kinda going from there.
I agree 100%. A lot of gems in that answer as well. And it's making me think about some past experiences where I've had to rely fully on likability and my interpersonal skills to get my foot in the door, show what I can do, perform, and then I'm off to the races. But you'd be surprised at how far that could take you, when you can get in and then do the work to back up what you promised you could do.
Just add the likability does kinda help the trust a little bit, so, like, if your team isn't performing or, like, I've had those instances where, like, we've really done a poor job, right? And if I'm an unlikable person or if I'm not genuine in really looking at them, usually through a Zoom or a Teams, it's usually, and they don't believe that, like, "Look, we're partners here, like, we did not do a good job. This is what we're gonna do to fix it," and then fix it, that falls on the likability side, but it helps with the trust side.
Yeah, that's a great example because every project isn't going to be a slam dunk, and some of them get rocky and you have to do damage control. And having that trust built with the client from day one can make those conversations a lot easier. But ownership, owning what you've done wrong and being committed to fixing it, is definitely the way to go. So thank you for sharing that example. I think that's a great point. You mentioned that you're a father too. I'm also a mom, but I have a small baby, so we're in different stages of parenting. I
Yeah.
want to know, how has parenthood influenced the way you lead your teams and make business decisions?
Yeah, that's a good question there. Yeah, look, I've experienced the whole realm of like I've got a 16-year-old and an 18-year-old. The 18-year-old just left for college. He's going to school in the Northeast, and my wife and I were looking at each other the other day. We were just sitting there because my daughter's 16, so of course she's out with her friends, and we're just sitting there, and I'm like, it's just really quiet. The house has suddenly gotten a lot bigger. We're like, oh, we don't need all this space. But to directly answer your question, I think it comes down to, and this is something that I fail at almost all the time, and I'm really trying to be better with it, but it's just like patience and and just consistency. Patience with, you've got a ways to go, but teenagers, I joke that I would take them being back in diapers and being in a crib over the whole teenage years. The teenager years are interesting to say the least. They're very interesting. This isn't a parenting podcast, but maybe I should get on one down the road. Who knows? But no, look, patience. Look, you can have a really bad day at work, and you come home, and the level of anxiety and everything else over things that that you've gone through aren't as big a deal as they're making it out to be. Tests that patience even more. So what it's taught me is I need to be as patient as I can be at home, which I'm not great at, to be fully transparent, but I definitely need to move that patience to work because I can't, they're not my kids, the people who work for me, although sometimes I feel that way, to be honest. But no, I think patience and I think, yeah, just consistency. What I mean consistency is you can't be inconsistent with how you manage people. Now, everyone is different. And, I literally just watched this documentary on the Dallas Cowboys and Jimmy Johnson, who was their original coach in the late 80s and 90s, who they won Super Bowls with. He was very honest with his players. He goes, I'm not treating you all different. Sorry, Emmett Smith and Michael Irvin and Troy Aikman will be treated differently than the third string offensive lineman. And there's a shade of truth to that, right? The people like, going back to the original comment of like, the people that get things done, I'm going to treat them a little differently than the people that are not getting things done. But I am going to try to help those people and coach those people and give feedback to get those other people up. So what I mean by consistency is, I guess, consistency in the core way of managing and communicating, but not everyone is different. And sometimes that's just how it goes. I'd be very surprised if that's not throughout any organization that, look, you've got your people that you can really depend on, right? You mentioned, people getting laid off, and if you got people who can do multiple things well, they have a leg up on someone who can just do one thing well. It's just how it is. And unfortunately, as you and I know, corporate America is all about the bottom line and the numbers. And my wife works for a large company that just went through some layoffs, and a lot of it was all around numbers. I'm sure there was some performance issues there too, but most of it was dictated by numbers.
So, Michael, what are you focused on in the business for the next quarter? What are the top priorities for Q4?
So yeah, your regular Q4 is our Q3. So we go April to March, which is neither here nor there. Look, my main focus for us is FIFA 26 World Cup. We work in that space a lot. We staff iconic big sporting events from the Paris Olympic Games in our Paris office last summer to Wimbledon and Super Bowls and the Euros, which is, soccer championships in our German office. We've kind of found this niche with iconic big sporting events. We are the official staffing partner for Puma across all of F1. So all the F1 races, when you go on site to buy your $900 hat, it's really expensive, Desiree. The stuff there is unbelievable how expensive it is. But we're the ones who staff the merchandise tents. So we don't just staff in sports, but that's really become a niche of ours. So I'm really focused on World Cup for next summer, but all of that will begin. Hopefully, we've been pretty patient, but working on proposals and RFPs now, and then we anticipate the beginning of 26, the end of 25, the beginning of 26, going into the summer to be really, really busy for us. We're just uniquely positioned as a global agency to be able to staff in multiple countries, all in like under one roof. Not really any staffing agency can do that, so that's definitely our value prop. I'm going to give some free promo to my company. But yeah, that's really what I'm looking at. And then obviously, we do a lot of retail staffing. So, as we get into the holidays and then, just to continue to keep our current clients happy and grow our trust and work and scale with our new clients, is always top of mind.
This has been a really great conversation. I think it took some positive twists and turns that I didn't know we would go, the direction we would go in today, but it's been really insightful and just a breath of fresh air. I can relate to a lot of the stories you've shared and the lessons learned and my own personal leadership experiences as well. So, Michael, I want to wrap up this conversation by asking you what your one bright idea is that you would leave with the audience. A bright idea could be a mindset shift, a strategy, a tool, a book, a podcast, something that is making a positive difference for you. What would that one thing be?
Yeah, I think it goes back to what we talked about on a couple different phases. One, focus on getting things done wherever you are. I think that is a key to anyone who's listening. I would suggest you Google or YouTube, Obama get things done and just watch the video. It's very short, but it really says a lot, and I relate to it a ton. And then what's been really top of mind for me, even over just the last week or so, Desiree, from an idea standpoint, is just more of a personal like reflection of like where your energy is going. I'm trying to really put my energy towards things that for me, everyone's different. Everyone has their own journey. What's important to me, right? And what's important to me right now is, making sure my team feels like we're all rowing in the same direction. And if we're not, how do I fix that? And also just making sure that their energy and time is spent, in a more focused and positive way. I know that sounds cliche. It's not very specific, but I think everyone can kind of relate to that and look introspectively to say, all right, where am I putting my energy towards, and is that positive for me personally and for the company and business that I'm working for?
Well, there you have it, folks. Thank you so much, Michael, for joining us today on the Bright Ideas podcast. If there are listeners in the audience who would like to learn more about Elevate Global, the work you're doing, where should they go for more information? How can they connect with you?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, so I'm sure we can, look me up on LinkedIn. I'm happy to connect with folks and expand the network. As far as Elevate's concerned, yeah, our website is pretty easy. It's called weareelevate.global. It's a great overview of everything that we do. Even for folks out there, we are a staff agency. So if you're looking for work and or you're between jobs, you're looking to make some extra money on some really fun programs, it's a good way to work and do some work on your own schedule while you're maybe looking for something full time. And especially obviously in the marketing and event space, if that's something you're currently looking for, we can always use brand ambassadors throughout the US and Canada. So, yeah, that would be the best way to reach out to us. But yeah, Desiree, I just want to thank you for the time. It's been great. I love being able to share my experiences, and hopefully it's helpful for those that are listening.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining me. Thanks for tuning in to Bright Ideas. If today's episode gave you something to think about, here's your next step. DM me the word growth on LinkedIn to start a conversation about how we can help you scale smarter. And if you're a founder, CEO, or senior talent leader with a story to share, I'd love to hear from you. Reach out about joining me on a future episode. And if you don't want to miss future conversations, Be sure to follow the show, leave a quick rating, and download your favorite episodes to take them on the go. Your support helps more leaders discover bright ideas. Until next time, be bold, be resilient, be sharp. I'm Desiree B. Sharpe.